Hi again. Core action value number 3 is awareness. And awareness simply means being awake, being alert, being aware as you go through life. And it is the secret to happiness. It's also the secret to success in virtually every dimension of life. If you are a salesperson, for example, and of course one way or another we're all in sales, read any book on sales and they'll tell you what's most important is the ability to really listen to pay attention to what your client, what your customer wants. If you're in healthcare, if you're in patient care, Florence Nightingale in her book Notes on Nursing, one of the greatest books ever written in the field of healthcare, said that the most important factor, if you would be a good nurse, a good caregiver, it is not clinical skills, it is not being caring and compassionate, it is the ability to acutely observe, to be aware of your patient's condition. For setting goals, it is so important to be aware of what's going on in the world around you, to be aware of the potential obstacles. What's the competition doing? What do your customers really want? In parenting, simply connecting with, being aware of what your child is actually trying to tell you, not just in words but in body language and their attitude about what's really going on, is so important. And there's both an inner and an outer dimension to awareness, isn't there? The inner dimension, which we've sort of already talked about and will more, is paying attention to what's going on internally, emotionally, spiritually, what's happening inside so that you don't become your own worst enemy. And then the external dimension, being aware of other people, being aware of the trends in the world and what's happening. Awareness is an essential element of emotional intelligence. If you read any of Daniel Goleman's books on emotional intelligence, working with emotional intelligence, he'll talk about being aware, being the cornerstones we're going to talk about, being mindful and objective and empathetic. Those are essential elements of emotional intelligence. So let's look more deeply into some of the cornerstones. And the first one is mindfulness. Being mindfully connected with yourself and with the world around you. And I really think this is the secret to personal emotional happiness and spiritual equanimity. All emotional pain, think about this, all emotional pain is caused by a failure of awareness. It's caused by time travel, by little out-of-body experiences. As a speaker, I see this all the time. I'll be talking to an audience and there's somebody in the front row and I can see their body there, but I know nobody's home. Mentally, they're somewhere else. Think about it. Anger, regret, hatred, guilt, remorse, grief, shame, all of those painful emotions are rooted in the past. Fear, worry, dread, uncertainty, doubt, all of those painful emotions are anchored in some point in the future. And when you can keep your attention, keep your presence in the present, in the immediate moment, there's nothing to be guilty of. There's nothing to be afraid of. This is the secret to personal happiness. So let me ask you to imagine this. You come home one day, you go to your mailbox, you're going through your mail, and there is a certified letter from the IRS, and you know you're not expecting a refund. What is your immediate emotional reaction going to be? And for most of us, it's going to be a mini panic attack. Oh! What if instead you do this? You're going through your mail, certified letter from the IRS. I wonder what they want. You go inside, you make a pot of coffee, you're reading your mail, you open this letter up. Ooh, they want money. A lot of money. I wonder if they'll get it. That is what the Zen masters call beginner's mind. Not assuming what's going to happen, good or bad, but just being present. I wonder what's going to happen. Having this sort of childlike, not childish, childlike curiosity. I wonder what happens next. And if you can have that sort of beginner's mind, that mindfully paying attention to what's happening and not jumping to conclusions. You know, a friend of mine is an accountant, a tax accountant. He tells me that of all the audits that are done by the IRS, 1 of every 2 results in the taxpayer getting a bigger refund. He says when you get that letter saying that you're going to be audited, your chances are even of paying more or getting more back. Why do we automatically jump to the negative conclusion? I love this saying. Yesterday is a canceled check. Tomorrow is a promissory note. Today is cash. And if you can keep reminding yourself to enjoy what Spencer Johnson, who was co-author of The 1 Minute Manager, he wrote another book called The Present. He said the present is the gift. If you can learn from the past, plan for the future, but live in the present, that is mindfulness as a value. A couple things that will help you do this. One is make optimal use of what I think of as the golden hour of your day. The first 30 minutes in the morning and the last 30 minutes before you go to bed. In the morning, get up, make a list of things you're grateful for. Do some physical exercise. Instead of going right to the news, read something that inspires you. Take time to just sit and think about what your goals and your plans are for the day. Take time to be awake, to be mindful. And at the end of the day, think about what happened during your day. Think about what you're going to do tomorrow. Again, try to keep your attention anchored in the present. One more thing. Every spiritual tradition has some form of meditative practice, whether it's Zen meditation, transcendental meditation, walking meditation, prayer beads, centering prayer. Almost every spiritual tradition has some form of meditative practice, and almost every one of them begins with breathing. Just that simple act of taking a breath. And if you want to be more mindful, you really need to start there with being more attentive to how we breathe. Most of us, as we get older, we tend to breathe low and deep and shallow here. Rapid breathing, it's like a mini crisis going on all the time. And if a couple times an hour you could just take a minute, take 30 seconds and just breathe deep into your gut, it will help you be more attentive, more mindful. The second cornerstone is objectivity. And here's my definition. It is simply to see the world as it really is. Not as it used to be. Not as you think it should be. Not as you wish it were. Not as you fear it might become. But to see it as it really is. That is a real challenge, isn't it? And it is even harder to see yourself as you really are. To see yourself as other people would see you, because you're looking at yourself through this lens of your ego, your emotions, your own ambitions. Remember the iron triangle of false personality. There's a fair amount of research in recent years about how people make up their minds about things. And it turns out that it is the opposite of the way it should be, and it's the opposite of the way you probably think you do it. You would think that we would look at the facts and then make up our minds. But it turns out that it works in reverse. We have a certain opinion, and then we look for the facts that support that opinion. You have a certain set of opinions, so you read the Wall Street Journal and watch Fox News. Or you have a certain divergent set of opinions, so you watch CNN and read the New York Times. And part of being objective, remember, just because you believe something doesn't make it true, and the reverse. Part of being objective is the ability to put yourself on the other side, to see an issue from both perspectives, to remind yourself, just because I believe this doesn't necessarily make it true. I maybe should change my opinion. And I want to share with you 2 practical things that can help you be more objective. One is to distinguish between gut feel, gut reaction, and intuition. We often use those terms interchangeably, but anytime I hear somebody say, oh, I have a pretty good gut feel for people, I can size them up like that. You know, there's research that shows the average job interview is over within less than a minute. Within a minute, the interviewer has made up his or her mind as to whether or not this person is a candidate. And within a minute, you really can't judge very much. You're making a snap judgment based on superficialities. Intuition, on the other hand, is the coming together of a history of fact-finding, thinking, reading, and suddenly this aha moment like Archimedes had in the tub, but it was not a gut reaction, it was a gelling of a lot of things. Great example from the world of business. For many years, Microsoft said the internet is not part of our business. Our business is desktop computing, is hardware. And then, almost on the turn of a dime, they went full force into the internet. And it wasn't like Bill Gates woke up one morning and said, ooh, I'm having a gut reaction that the internet's important. What happened is they've been talking to customers, they've been reading the literature, they've been watching what's happening, watching competitors. And all of these things gelled fairly quickly, and they realized they had to make a quick change in their business strategy. So whenever you get that sort of reaction, ask yourself, who's talking? Is this an emotional gut reaction? Is this my cave person brain? Or is this an intuitive leap? Is this the intelligent part of my brain putting things together in such a way that I get this aha moment? And here's a game you can play that can help you be more objective and help you less often be your own worst enemy. And I call it the reporter game. Especially if you're in a meeting where things might be contentious, if you're in an argument, if you're in a highly emotional state, play like you're a reporter. And I actually carry around a little steno pad and a pen, and I'll pull it out and I'll say, you mind if I make a few notes? And instead of saying what I'm thinking, that was a stupid thing to say, I'll write it down. I can't believe so-and-so said this. What two things does a reporter have to be? Observant, not just the words being said, but body language and everything, and objective, not interjecting your own opinions into it, but trying to write it down objectively. And here, this does a couple things for me, and it will for you. One, it prevents me from saying things that I regret later. And if I don't say something, I don't have to apologize for it. Or worse yet, dig an even deeper hole by trying to defend myself when I shouldn't have said it in the first place. Second, it is really amazing, actually it's appalling, how many times I go back and read what I'd written the day before and say, oh my goodness, I'm so glad I didn't say that. Now I don't have to apologize. Now I don't have to try to dig my way out of that hole. The third cornerstone really builds on the first two of mindfulness and objectivity, and that is empathy. And there are three terms that we use more or less interchangeably, but they're three very different things. Commiseration, sympathy, and empathy. Commiseration, break the word down, commiserate, you get co-miserate, be miserable together. That's two people who are very often trying to one-up each other. Oh, you think you've got it bad, listen to this. And it's sort of a waste of time. Sympathy, on the other hand, is genuinely feeling sorry for somebody. You know, if someone comes to you and says, I've just been diagnosed with cancer, you don't want to say, well, stiff upper lip, you're going to beat this. What they really need is they need a hug, and they need you to feel for them. They maybe need you to cry for them. They need your sympathy. Empathy is much harder. It is the ability to actually put yourself in somebody else's shoes, to feel what they are feeling. Empathy is the reason that the very best drug and alcohol counselors are people who have already been in the hell of drug and alcohol addiction, because they know what you're feeling. They know what you're going through. For them, it's not an academic thing. For them, it's something that they have personally experienced. In his book on emotional intelligence, Daniel Goleman says empathy is social radar. It's the ability to read somebody else's, not just their words or their body language, but to actually read their emotions. And here's a real paradox. Empathy is also the key ingredient of charisma. The most charismatic people are people who really do feel our pain, who really can relate to where we're at. And if you want to be a more charismatic leader, and leaders need to be charismatic, it begins often with being empathetic. Mary Kay Ash, you know, the founder of Mary Kay Cosmetics Company, a great leader, used to tell her beauty consultants, anytime you're talking to somebody, you imagine they have a sign that says MMFI, make me feel important. Isn't that what empathy is all about? Making somebody else feel special, making them feel important. I was working with a hospital in the great American Southwest, a hospital that serves a large Native American community, Navajo community. And I was talking to our spark plugs. That's what, as you know, that's what we call the people who go through our course. And I was telling them about Mary Kay Ash and MMFI. And this one young man, a member of the Navajo tribe himself, went back to his department, posted a sign calling a mandatory staff meeting. Now, he's not the department head, he's a unit clerk, but his attitude was proceed until apprehended. He called a mandatory staff meeting. People are saying, what's he doing calling a meeting? And they all get together and he says, I have a question for you. When a drunk Indian comes into our ER on a Friday night, do we make him feel important? And of course they all kind of, well, probably not. He said, why do you suppose he drinks? And a little more sheepishness, well, probably because he doesn't feel important. And so the young man said, you mean to tell me that by the way, we know by the way we treat the symptoms, we contribute to the disease? He said, that's not what the mission statement in our lobby says we do. I'm not proud of that. In fact, I think that's malpractice. What are we going to do about it? And you know what they did? They had a sign made that said MMFI, make me feel important, put it in a frame, posted it on the inside of the emergency room door as a reminder. Anytime anybody comes through that door, no matter what they look like, talk like, act like, or smell like, our obligation, our responsibility is to make that person feel special, sacred, wanted, and somehow important. That simple reminder of empathy. They started treating their patients with more respect and dignity. They started treating each other with more respect and civility. People all around the hospital started wondering, what are they smoking down there in the ER? Everybody's so nice these days. One young man had the courage to confront people, to say, we're not living our values. We talk about empathy, but we're not living it. One young man had an impact on the culture of an entire organization and on the way people were cared for. In AA, Alcoholics Anonymous, there's a principle called mutuality. And here's how it came about. The first alcoholic, Bill W., was on the road. He's a salesperson on the road, and he hears people in the bar, and he says, man, I need a drink. And he says, I don't need a drink, I need another drunk. So he calls the second member, Dr. Bob, on the phone, and they talk all night. They keep each other sober. Later, they're visiting the man who became the third member of AA, and they're talking to him about these principles they've been working on, and he keeps saying, leave me alone, stop trying to change me. Finally, Bill W. says, we're not trying to change you at all. He says, you're not? He said, no. We're not even here for you, really. You're not? No, we're here for us. We know the only way we can stay sober is by helping somebody else, helping another drunk be sober. And if you don't want our help, that's okay. We'll go find somebody else. But make no mistake, we need you as much as you need us. How different would our world be if we all adhered to that principle of mutuality? I, as a teacher, need my students every bit as much as they need me. I, as a caregiver, need the patient in the bed or on that stretcher in the ER every bit as much as they need me. I, as a salesperson, need you as a customer every bit as much as you need me. How much better would our world be if we really could live with that sort of empathy? And here's the last thing I'm going to suggest on empathy, and that is to become a Dhyana wrap. Don't go look the word up. It's not in the dictionary, not yet anyway, because I made it up. Dhyana wrap, D-I-O-N-A-R-A-P, is the word paranoid spelled backwards. What if you could be a backwards paranoid, a reverse paranoid, and assume everybody likes you? Everybody wants you to do well. Everybody's in your court. And if they say something that hurts, if they say something you disagree with, your reaction is, oh, what are they trying to teach me? Or they've made a mistake. You'll be a lot happier. You'll have a lot more emotional equanimity and spiritual peace. You'll be a better friend. You'll have more friends. And you'll do a better job of being empathetic to others if you can be a Dhyana wrap. And cornerstone number 4 is reflection. Taking the time to be aware, to think about what's going on the inside. This can be, it can be a painful experience, can it? It is often an exercise in confronting your lesser self, your worse self, and challenging that person to become your better self. Here's how I think of it. You know the old cartoon with the angel on one shoulder and the devil on the other? I think of it as the ongoing conflict between ego and soul. Ego is the loud, demanding voice that wants things. Soul is the soft, quiet voice that wants experiences. And ego is concerned about me, what's in it for me. Soul is concerned about other people. And reflection gives me that opportunity, will give you that opportunity to think about what's been the balance between ego and soul today. And when is taking that time for reflection most important? Often when it's hardest to do, and that is when your world's falling apart. When you have just lost a job, that is when it is most important for you to ask that question, well, what would I do if every job paid the same? And maybe it is time for me to go back to school or to start that business or to write the book. It is most important at times when you're in pain. You know, the term midlife crisis gets a bad name because it should be called midlife opportunity, because there at the middle of life, you're asking yourself, am I on the right path? Where do I want to go from this point forward? And even though it's painful, it can also be a healing time. It can also be a time of changing your direction if you're paying attention, if you're properly reflective. Let me wrap up with this thought. I'm sure that you, like me, have on occasion, maybe frequently, hopped in the car to drive somewhere and wondered how you got there. In between, your mind was a million different places than on the road. And we can do that on the routine stuff of life. We can go through life on autopilot. But if you're we can go through chores on autopilot. If you're going through your life on autopilot, think of how much you're missing. And what awareness means is to enjoy, to appreciate, to experience those individual moments and not to always be going somewhere, to always be running away from something, but to enjoy the present. Learn from the past. Plan for the future. Live in the present. Today is cash. Next time we'll talk about courage and perseverance. Those are the next two values. And that is taking the first three, authenticity, integrity, awareness. Courage and perseverance to me is taking those three and really making them practical in the real world. So I'll see you next time. We'll talk about courage. Between now and then, here's a thought to plant in your head. Fear is a reaction. Courage is a decision. I'll see you then.